Welcome to week 5 of the RotoCurve videos. It's already been 5 weeks of the NFL season. Time seems to certainly fly at this point of the year with all of us so busy. It's all kinds of week and you just do it for one day, but we're having fun. But before we get started with the quarterbacks for this week, which I think we got some good info on, let me tell you about the NFL package at rotocurve.com. Since I am technologically inept, let's try and give you a screen share here. Here we go. We've got this free trial now, and I've mentioned every show what this includes. This, of course, includes all the DFS tools that you need, like red zone utilization. You get all of our analysis. You get all kinds of tools that you need to succeed in DFS. You get the ownership percentage on Thursdays. It usually costs you $5 or $7. It only costs you $5 now, but now we're giving you a free trial. So only good things are happening at rotocurve.com. Go to rotocurve.com/NFL trial to get your free trial for this outstanding package that Jim and I are a part of. And Jim, why don't you get us started with quarterbacks for this week? I think the obvious this week is going to be Tom Brady. So I think we need to have an extended conversation on him. What is your feeling with Tom Brady coming back, kind of pissed off after Deflategate? Are you buying that narrative, or how do we feel about him? Is he cash? Is he tournament? Where do we use him?
Yeah, I mean, he's a little bit he's fine in both, really. I mean, sometimes when a player is expected to have 302 as their floor, kind of, I think they're viable in both formats. But I'm actually not as into him in cash. I like the idea of the volume and everything, but there is an idea, I think, that they get up big and they do the thing where, it could be a blunt second half. At the same time, they can really get their work done early. I have some reservations. I don't think his weapons are all intact with Gronk, all the word about Gronk not being right. Brady's scoring rate, TD rate, does dip a lot when Gronk's not in the field. I mean, Gronk will be on the field, but I don't know. I'm really excited for him to be back in my redraft leagues and in general for the narrative of Angry Brady, but I think it's going to be a really obvious play this week. I'm actually more into Ben Roethlisberger, to tell you the truth. I think there's a better collection of weapons there. I think the matchup is – I'm not saying that the Jets or the Browns, but their secondary is terrible. They do have a pass rush, but I just feel like, Ben has his full complement of weapons. You get a little bit of discount on him. And also, I just think there's more stacks to create with him.
Yeah, some interesting stats on Ben just off the top of my head. He now ranks 5th in NFL history in 5 touchdown games, and all of them have come at home, literally all of them. Last year, you look back to his best games, I think 6 of his 7 best came at home. So really, I think Roethlisberger is becoming a guy who it's just a split thing. I mean, those numbers are too glaring to avoid, honestly, those home splits. So I think Ben Roethlisberger is certainly the pivot from Brady. But I want to give you some Brady stats. We're talking about the last 10 years is what I've got here in this split. When the Patriots are 10-point favorites or better, he averages 23.28 fantasy points in the split. They've been favored by 10 38 times in the last 10 years. How many do you think he averages out of it? Again, 23.28 in the split. How many fantasy points do you think he averages when they are not favored by at least 10?
It's 17.
24.43. So he actually averages more when they're not giant favorites, which sort of makes sense. When they get up, they stop passing. Maybe they do go to LeGarrette Blount, like you said. So I think we'll get to backs, and I think he is a great tournament option. But yeah, I mean, I don't think for that reason that Brady is a necessary asset in cash. I think I was on Cam Newton, which is against my strategy last week in cash games where you pay up for the quarterback, and it burned me. And I'm looking at it this week, and, the Browns are obviously a great matchup. Everyone's been torching them. I mean, Tannehill, Cousins, basically everyone. But even so, I think there are other matchups, and I think my cash game quarterback this week is Carson Wentz. I really like that matchup against the Lions defense. It's allowed 12 touchdowns so far. They rank 2nd in the position in fantasy points allowed. And Wentz ranks as Pro Football Focus's top quarterback so far. He's been playing incredible. I mean, even though his numbers aren't off the charts, if you've been watching the games, a lot of his best throws have been on balls that his receivers have dropped. So as long as they can hang on to the ball against a bad secondary, Wentz is going to be playing in a dome, which you got to like. He's got Zach Ertz back, which, this defense in this last 20 games has allowed 18 touchdowns to opposing tight ends. So I think Ertz is a great play this week and someone he's going to be looking for. I think this sets up absolutely perfectly for Carson Wentz as a cash game play. And I think that's the direction I'm going. Do you have any qualms about that, or do you like someone else in cash?
No, I mean, I think it's somewhat bold, but at the same time, like in the sense that I think there is a correction at some point coming for Wentz, but I don't think it has to be a dramatically bad correction fantasy-wise. You know what I mean? Like, I think he could actually have a game where he makes some mistakes, but it doesn't really affect the fantasy profile very much. I agree with you in the sense that with Ziggy Ansah, again, looking unlikely, I mean, they're actually adding injuries to DeAndre Levy now. So it's like a quad and a knee. So, no, I agree with you. It's kind of a one cornerback team. They're hoping guys like Hyder, are creating the pass rush. It's not really a very intimidating team for a quarterback to play against. So I don't dislike that. In that same vein, if I'm going to get off of one of these guys paying up and I want to build a cash lineup that's just like full of awesome skill players, like, for example, instead of getting Ben, paying up for Brown and not having to wear, in the sense that I'm not going to stack in cash with that, but still getting Roethlisberger's, half of his passing volume basically is usually what you're getting with Antonio. I would pay down for the Denver quarterback, whichever one it is. I mean, last week Paxton Lynch led the NFL in air yards per target. Like, this isn't your Dak Prescott kind of Carson Wentz tailored down check down offense that they're running for him. He was chucking the ball downfield. He's known for the big arm. And, you just talked about the matchup with Detroit. Well, the team that's given up the most points to quarterbacks is Atlanta, another team with no pass rush. They have the fewest sacks. They've only been pressuring opposing pockets 19% of dropbacks, which is the lowest rate in the league. So really, a clean pocket almost makes anybody look good. So I really wouldn't be worried. They're the same price on DraftKings. They're both near the pricing floor on both markets. I mean, I think Simeon's a little bit more on FanDuel because of the rising price. But at the same time, two stud wideouts, that's not an aberration. Those guys are playing well. I don't know. I just feel like it's a good matchup. The point total's pretty high there, and it's not really because people expect it to be a shootout.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. I think that's a nice pivot. I think if you're going really cheap, now is kind of the week. You talked about a corrections for Wentz in the negative direction. How about a positive correction for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's only 5,100 on DraftKings? I think if you're going to make the swap down, like you said, if you want Antonio Brown and you want Le'Veon Bell and you want all the stars at the other positions in your lineup, I think Fitzpatrick is the guy who's basically a total punt at this point. And I know this Pittsburgh defense has allowed 16 points or less in 3 of their last 4, but I think Fitzpatrick's just too good for the way he's been playing it. And like you said, even if Wentz throws an interception or two, I still think the yards are going to be there. I mean, I think Roethlisberger is kind of going to have not as good of a game as last week, but he's going to, that offense at home is hard to stop. So the Jets are going to be playing from behind and they're going to have to throw. And I don't know if last year's more of an indicative of how Fitzpatrick could fare when he only has 2 options to choose from, basically. He did pretty well mixing it with them. This year he's kind of had more than he's used to with Decker, Enunwa, and Marshall. Last year he had the twin towers with Decker and Marshall, and he was pretty darn good. So I know that's not really a positive case for him, but I think Bilal Powell in the backfield might be making him feel more comfortable. He's caught 6 passes in back-to-back games. So I think if you're punting in cash games, Fitzpatrick has enough of a ceiling where I think he throws, 2 touchdowns. Even if they come in garbage time, this might be a situation where you're tilting him for a while and he comes through in the end. But I think that's the only other play for cash. Let's talk about tournaments now. We've talked a lot about cash. We talked a lot about Brady. Who are the pivots in tournaments?
One quick Brady stat I told you before. It's just funny. It's from ESPN Stats and Info. It's from like this memo I get. It's really quick. Tom Brady made his first start in Week 3 of 2001. He has won 172 games with the Patriots since that start. The Browns have won 175 games in their last 29 seasons since 1985. So, and they drafted. It's even worse. They drafted Spurgeon Wynn like 7 picks before Brady. And I think he threw like 3 NFL passes. I mean, everybody can pull the Brady got drafted late thing, but it's sad. That's a big difference. 2001 and 1985.
Yeah, we could also have the argument that would Brady be Brady with the Browns, which is for a different time. But yes, that is quite the.
And if we're gonna go like bizarre world, maybe Belichick never leaves the Browns. So in terms of GPP guys, I actually like a guy who I just think recency bias wise people will be off. I think there's a potential for a stack that we can get into later. But I think Eli is a fine tournament play here. The Green Bay secondary is not very good. They've been stuffing the run, but they've been getting beat up in the pass. I mean, I'm looking at it now. They have one cornerback in the top 25 in coverage grading on Pro Football Focus. It's Ladarius Gunter. And then nobody else in the top 65. And they rank 27th in pass coverage overall. They also rank out poorly in the mid-20s in DVOA on Football Outsiders, which is to say people studying tape also recognize this isn't a very good coverage secondary. Morgan Burnett's banged up. Ha-Ha Clinton-Dix is kind of a box safety at this point. So I just think it's a nice situation for a team that's going to pass it 40-plus times. They're on the road as dogs, so game script more than likely will trend pass heavy. I mean, the Giants don't have a backfield that's going to get going to take over a game. So I just think there's enough ingredients here to say that Eli could have one of those weird ceiling games. He's really due. He hasn't had a touchdown in 2 of his 4 games. I wouldn't be surprised at all with like 300 plus and 3 touchdowns. I'm not banking on it, which is why he's a tournament guy, but I think it's possible, and his price has dropped enough to kind of like the risk is baked in at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the other side of that matchup to start tournaments. I kind of have a base of just 3 or 4 guys for tournaments that I'm going to be building around. I think Aaron Rodgers is one of them. I do think that this game could low-key turn into a shootout. So I agree with you. I do think the Giants' defense is improved, but I think Aaron Rodgers and the Packers at home are just such a difficult matchup. They really have not been even trying to feed the ball to Lacy that much. It's really been the old-school Aaron Rodgers, which I love to see, which I think is, a testament to Jordy Nelson being back. So I like him. I like Andrew Luck against the Bears. When you look at Luck, really what he struggled with is that terrible offensive line. Well, the Bears lost Lamar Houston. They've lost Eddie Goldman. They've lost a lot of their pass rush and also Kyle Fuller. So they're missing a lot of important pieces. I think they have 6 sacks all year. So I think this is finally the game at home that Luck gets going. And, people who have been kind of downplaying his play to this point and saying he's done are going to look like, idiots after this game. I think this is the first Andrew Luck 300-yard, 3+ touchdown type game, even though the Bears have been pretty stout against quarterbacks. On the road, I think this is a tough matchup for them. And I also like Derek Carr. Derek Carr and Flacco are kind of the back end of my tournament plays. Jason Verrett probably being out for the year at this point, it sounds like today, certainly makes the matchup against San Diego more favorable. They've been giving up 300-yard passers, like they were mixtapes on the side of the road. I think Derek Carr, who clearly found a connection last week with Michael Crabtree, is going to go back to that. Well, obviously the matchup with Amari Cooper gets a lot easier now without Verrett. So I think the San Diego secondary is very beatable. And then Flacco, who says he wants to throw longer, I think if you pick on this Washington secondary, as long as you're, not picking on Josh Norman, especially if it's a guy like Steve Smith against him, I think he's going to be successful. I think Pitta has a nice day. I really like Wallace. I think even if Wallace is on Norman, I still think they could find him. We saw Goodwin. That was Revis, excuse me. But I think the way to beat Norman is either to be faster than him or to be taller than him. And I think Wallace is one of those guys who's faster. So that's kind of my core for GPP right there. Is there anyone we haven't mentioned that you want to add?
No, I mean, I'm on Carr as well. What I love, again, is like the clean pocket stuff. I mean, if you look, I look at splits for when guys aren't pressured. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but just the numbers go way up. I mean, you see like 30 and 40%, leaps in touchdown rate. It's obviously just because routes can develop longer. There's not that pressure. The Chargers have actually been pretty competent with creating pressure, but it's actually one of those things where I think a lot of it's been coverage sacks. Because Verrett is so good in coverage, I think it's actually going to affect their pass rush to an extent. I agree with you. Also, Carr's been sacked, the least amount of times in the league, or second least amount of times, maybe behind Breeze. He's only been pressured on 16% of his dropbacks. So a clean pocket at home, And that's also the highest point total of the week, right? It's the only game.
Right.
It's the only game with a 5 in front of it. It's the only game in the 50s. So I agree with you. I mean, we're agreeing once again. It's dangerous. I was going to say Hoyer, but I actually think that it turns midnight and he becomes Brian Hoyer again. So I don't think that's going to work out.
Yeah, that's about all we got for quarterbacks this week. I think I'm echoing a little, but before we leave, I want to reiterate, because I kind of booted it at the front, like I just booched the word booted. Apparently that's a word now. We're gonna start saying booched. But basically, we got an NFL package that's worth your time. We got a free trial on it. That again is rotocurve.com/NFL/ that's a hyphen. So it's rotocurve.com/NFL-trial. What you get: exclusive position rankings, projections, premium cheat sheets, must-have tools like rankings, points per attempt, red zone, which is what I tried to say at the beginning and stumbled, optimized lineups, ownership percentage, and things like that. So try the NFL trial. And if you like it, use the promo code CURVE to save the $2 on it. We will be back very soon with the running backs for week 5. So stay tuned.